Your thoughts are either your weapon or your prison.
Hmm.
That isn't just a motivational bumper sticker. It's the fundamental truth of human performance.
It's the whole game, really.
It's the core choice we face every single morning, every minute of every day, and honestly, most people don't even realize they have the power to choose.
They don't. They live as prisoners of their own internal chaos.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Right. This isn't a session designed to just, make you feel good for an hour. This is a focused, high-leverage blueprint for real transformation. We've synthesized a massive stack of sources, from performance psychology to behavioral science, and it's all framed around one idea.
That true success begins and ends with mental mastery.
That's it. We operate under the MGG philosophy. Mastery grows greatness.
So our mission today is explicitly about seizing control of that choice. We are looking at the mind not as a vague concept, but as the central, measurable control center of your entire life.
The source code.
Exactly. If you are serious about achieving anything, scaling a business, mastering a skill, building phenomenal relationships, you have to optimize the source code first.
And we have to define the stakes immediately, because they are incredibly high. The mind dictates 5 core, high-value domains of your entire trajectory.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, it dictates your habits. The entire daily structure of your life. Then it directs your emotions, which defines your internal climate.
Your whole state of being.
Right. It executes your decisions. Are they proactive or just reactive? It generates your discipline, which is, that critical gap between what you intend to do and what you actually do.
And finally,
And ultimately, it determines your success, your ability to operate consistently at a high level. So if that control center is compromised, if it's running old software or it's full of viruses, everything else just collapses.
it really is the ultimate leverage point, isn't it? Changing one single thought pattern can literally rearrange your calendar, your relationships, your income. So here's the structure for our deep dive today, and it's designed for immediate application. We are going to first perform a kind of radical self-assessment. We will diagnose the 11 real mental traps.
And these are the subtle, insidious patterns that even high achievers fall into. It's the psychological quicksand that blocks greatness.
And once we've done that honest diagnosis, we're pivoting immediately to the solution set.
Yes, we will provide 12 practical, high-value tools. And these are not just, theoretical concepts. These are actionable steps, the prescriptions you can grab right now and integrate into your day to build a mind that is resilient, focused, and truly unbreakable.
All right, let's ground ourselves firmly in that MGG perspective. We often see people chase external achievements, the money, the status, the physical fitness, thinking that those things will lead to some kind of internal peace or control.
But our sources consistently argue the exact opposite. Mental mastery is the prerequisite. It's the foundation for all other forms of success.
So it doesn't come after the win.
No, it's the engine that drives the win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. If you try to build a skyscraper on soft sand, it doesn't matter how strong the steel structure is, it's going to fail.
The foundation is everything.
Your mental framework is the foundation.
Yeah.
If you're mentally chaotic, distracted, reactive, then any external success you manage to achieve is built on that unstable ground. And it's just a matter of time before it all crumbles or you just completely burn out.
That brings us to the core power dynamic we're addressing, this continuous internal battle for control. The objective is to move from being reactive to being strategic in every single thought and action. So what does that reactive state actually look like in practice for, the modern person today?
That the reactive state is defined by external input. It's your internal urges dictating your behavior. You are, for all intents and purposes, a biological machine just responding to stimuli.
So the alarm goes off?
The alarm goes off, you immediately grab the phone, reacting to a notification. A client sends a frustrating email, you react emotionally, you type a response driven purely by anger or frustration, you feel a slight resistance to doing deep work, you react by immediately seeking a distraction.
You're constantly in defense mode.
Constantly. You're just putting out fires that other people, or frankly your own unmanaged thoughts have started.
Yeah.
You are, in effect, a puppet controlled by your environment.
That is such a powerful visual, being a puppet. So the shift to being strategic is about inserting a conscious choice into that tiny split-second space between the stimulus and the response. How significant is that pause?
It's everything. It is the entire game. The strategic mind observes the stimulus, the frustrating email, the demanding notification, the resistance to work, but it doesn't immediately engage the emotional circuit.
It just watches it.
It observes.
Yeah.
It chooses the highest leverage response that's aligned with long-term goals, and then it executes that response, regardless of how you might feel in that moment.
So it asks a different question.
A totally different question. The strategic mind asks, what is the most effective use of my mental energy right now? It transforms you from a victim of circumstance into the master architect of your internal landscape, and by extension, your external reality.
But that shift isn't easy.
Not at all, which is why we have to start with radical honesty about the pitfalls. We can't implement the strategy until we diagnose the weaknesses.
That's perfectly said. If we don't identify the subtle ways the mind sabotages itself, we just keep running into the same brick walls over and over again. So let's jump into that diagnosis. This is the moment to listen closely and recognize which of these 11 traps is stealing your power right now.
And our goal here is not to lecture you, but to provide clarity. You need to identify the enemy, the internal mechanism, before you can develop the counter strategy. Let's start with what we'd call the operational issues.
Okay, the first category. This deals with the lack of intentionality in our daily processes. We're calling this a state of mental passivity.
And the number one offender is, 1, living on autopilot. And this isn't about being busy. It's about being busy without any conscious direction. We're talking about the deep mechanism of reactive living. The day dictates you. You do not dictate the day.
Right. You wake up, you scroll a habit, installed by algorithms, not by your own choice. You eat whatever is easiest and most available. You go through the motions at work, responding to emails, attending meetings, but rarely engaging in that high-level creative problem solving.
And then you consume entertainment until you crash, only to wake up and repeat the exact same cycle.
So what is the fundamental cost of this autopilot existence? It feels efficient, but what's the real price?
The cost is surrendering your creative power. The human brain is incredibly efficient, and it loves, absolutely loves, defaulting to installed routines.
The path of least resistance.
Always. The reactive mind defaults to comfort, ease, and previously installed habits, which statistically are usually survival-based, seeking simple rewards, avoiding pain. They're not greatness-based.
So if you're not consciously engaging,
If you are not consciously designing your day and intentionally engaging the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, you are unconsciously defaulting to that path of least resistance, which inevitably always leads to mediocrity. You are giving up the most valuable commodity you possess, conscious choice.
and when you are running on that low engagement autopilot, you become highly susceptible to the second trap, which is 2, mental clutter and overstimulation. I mean, we live in a world that guarantees an information fire hose directed right at your mind, 204/7.
The problem isn't just the quantity of information, it's the velocity and the complete lack of relevance. Every notification, every endless news feed, every comparison on social media, every trivial piece of celebrity gossip, it all demands a tiny piece of your finite processing power, and it just piles up.
It's like cognitive debt.
It is. Imagine trying to sort 20,000 irrelevant emails before you can even start your most important project for the day. That is what our brain deals with constantly.
And the physiological impact is severe. If the goal is high performance, what exactly does this clutter destroy?
It destroys clarity, and it destroys your decision-making power. When your processing power is constantly taxed by irrelevant stimuli, you lose the bandwidth needed for deep strategic thought.
So you get stuck.
You get stuck. The result is chronic indecision and weakened focus. On top of that, your stress levels rise because the brain never has the space to fully process stimuli and file it away. You are in a constant state of low-grade cognitive alert, which severely drains your executive function.
It's the paradox of information abundance, isn't it? The more inputs you consume, the less informed and capable you actually feel.
Precisely. And when the mind is exhausted from dealing with that perpetual chaos and overstimulation, it does what any overworked organ does.
Right.
It seeks rest, but it's often disguised as 3. Mental laziness. This is the resistance to productive discomfort.
And this is a big one. People mistakenly think mental laziness is just being physically tired.
It's not. It's the active avoidance of high cognitive load. It's avoiding deep thinking, avoiding genuine problem solving, and avoiding any task that requires sustained, uncomfortable attention. The brain just prefers the easy path, the shallow consumption, because it conserves energy.
But avoiding that productive discomfort, that's what leads to a dull, weak mind. How do we explain that connection for someone who's not seeing it?
Thinking is fundamentally a muscle. We all understand that physical strength requires resistance training. You have to lift heavy things. Mental strength is
You
identical.
need to lift heavy thoughts.
You need to lift heavy thoughts. If you only consume easy content, if you only solve simple problems, if you only ever skim surfaces, that cognitive muscle atrophies. Mastery requires the friction of genuine intellectual challenge. If your mind recoils the second something feels hard, you are mentally lazy, and you are guaranteeing that you will never be able to handle complex problems effectively, ensuring your greatness just remains untapped.
Wow. Okay, so if that first category was about operational failures, this next one delves into the deep internal mechanics, how we respond to the world, and who we believe ourselves to be.
Right. And let's start with one of the most destructive forces against consistency. 4. Emotional impulsiveness. This is where discipline goes to die, and it often goes very, very loudly.
We hear a lot about controlling emotions, but what's the actual difference between simply feeling an emotion and being impulsive?
The difference is choice. Emotional impulsiveness means you are handing the steering wheel of your life to whatever feeling happens to be strongest in that single moment.
So anger takes the wheel.
Anger leads to a destructive confrontation. Frustration leads to quitting a project. Desire for immediate gratification leads to ordering food instead of cooking the healthy meal you had planned. This is the absolute opposite of strategy.
And if you allow your emotions to run the day,
They will dictate actions that consistently sabotage your long-term goals and undermine your carefully laid plans. You become emotionally predictable, and therefore, you become manipulable, even by your own internal states.
this sets the stage for the fifth and, I would argue, the most vulnerable trap. 5. No internal identity. This is that profound, critical lack of knowing who you are at your core, defined by your own values and convictions.
This is a huge one. If you do not have a strong, internally convicted identity, a bedrock sense of self that's separate from external validation, you are highly, highly susceptible to external influence.
You become a psychological chameleon.
A perfect description. You change colors to fit your social circle, the current media trends, or whoever you last spoke to. You risk allowing the world, your superficial successes, your current failures, or public opinion to define your worth and dictate your actions.
The danger there is that without that conviction, all your efforts feel hollow, right? There's no why behind them.
Precisely. Internal conviction is the compass of greatness. Without it, you are constantly sailing by stars chosen by others, and you will perpetually feel fragmented and unfulfilled. Your actions won't align with your deepest truth because you haven't taken the time to establish what that truth even is. The mind becomes dependent on external validation, which makes consistency impossible because the definition of success just keeps shifting.
And when you lack that internal compass, the mind defaults to the easiest program available, which is almost always 6. Fear-based thinking. Fear isn't just a feeling, it's an active mental program that stops progress cold.
And we really need to break down these paralyzing fears because they're so common. It's the fear of failure, which stops you from even starting the high-risk, high-reward project.
Right.
It's the fear of being seen or judged, which stops you from leading, from stepping into the spotlight, or from expressing your unique ideas. And underneath it all, it is often the foundational fear of not being good enough, which undermines your sense of even deserving success in the first place.
And what happens physiologically when fear dictates your thoughts? This isn't just in your head, right?
No, it's a physical response. When the mind operates from fear, the prefrontal cortex, the strategic problem-solving creative part of the brain, literally shuts down or becomes highly inhibited. Fear activates the primal brain, which is only concerned with immediate safety, not long-term growth.
So your best thinking just goes offline.
Completely offline.
Yeah.
Your creativity is paralyzed, your risk tolerance drops to zero, and the mind becomes a maximum security prison designed entirely by your own insecurities. You know the steps you need to take, but the emotional veto power of fear prevents any meaningful action from ever happening.
Moving into the third category, we're addressing resource depletion, how we manage our attention and our internal energy, because that determines our capacity for high performance.
Yeah, let's talk about the constant drain caused by 7, zero mental boundaries. Imagine your mind is a high-value, highly sensitive data center. If you leave the gates wide open, everyone and everything just walks right in, makes a ton of noise, and starts unplugging essential equipment.
This is more than just learning to say no to people, isn't it? It's about setting boundaries on what thoughts you even allow to consume your internal resources.
Absolutely. It's the massive energy drain caused by allowing every trivial drama from your peripheral vision, every negative opinion about you, and every external demand to invade your private mental space. Your attention is your most precious resource.
It's your currency.
It's your only currency. And if you allow it to be constantly hijacked by external noise, other people's anxieties, social media arguments, generalized negativity, you completely deplete your capacity to focus on your actual work.
And you said this connects directly to a loss of confidence. How so?
When your attention is constantly fragmented and dictated by external forces, you subconsciously feel incapable of controlling your own inner world. And if you can't control your inner world, taking control of the external world seems completely impossible.
And driving that lack of boundaries is the modern pandemic of AD, addictive distractions. This is the core of dopamine addiction, which is now, it's weakening the modern mind almost structurally.
It's the focus killer. We've trained our brains through the consistent use of fast-paced media and social feeds to expect a quick hit, an immediate reward. We are constantly seeking that immediate gratification from scrolling, gaming, or just the rapid consumption of easily digestible content. The whole chemical reward system is hijacked.
So what does this constant seeking do to our ability to achieve, say, deep work?
It leads to a weak, highly restless mind that is physiologically unable to tolerate silence, boredom, or deep, sustained, complex work. The neural pathways are literally trained to jump from one thing to the next, like a startled rabbit.
So when you sit down to focus...
When you sit down for a 30-minute focused work session, your brain rebels. It demands that quick hit.
Yeah.
You have trained your mind to be impulsive and incapable of settling into the slow, difficult process where greatness is actually forged.
And while the mind is running this frantic, distracted program, there's a constant malicious soundtrack playing in the background. 9. Negative inner dialogue.
This is about identifying the inner enemy, that invisible, relentless critic that is always with you. It's that voice repeating messages like, "You're not smart enough," or "See, you always fail. Why even bother trying?"
And this internal commentary, it's not based on objective reality.
Not at all. It's usually just a recording of past criticisms, deeply held limiting beliefs, or magnified insecurities.
The terrifying thing about this inner dialogue is that we tend to treat it as truth simply because it's our own voice, right?
Exactly. We listen to it without any verification. If you allow that critical voice to be the loudest one in the room, you are actively, continuously, and successfully sabotaging your own confidence and your own potential. Your mind becomes a hostile environment.
So you become your own biggest obstacle.
Your own most effective block to progress. Because every time you attempt something challenging, that inner enemy is right there to remind you of every past mistake and inflate the probability of future failure. You defeat yourself before you even begin.
Okay, finally, we address the scope and longevity of the mental operation, how the mind plans for and recovers from sustained effort.
Let's look at 10. Lack of long-term vision. The trap here is thinking only in days, or maybe weeks, instead of mapping your trajectory over decades.
How does that short-term focus, which seems so pragmatic, actually hurt high performance?
When you focus only on the immediate outcome, the immediate reward, or the immediate difficulty, you create this debilitating cocktail of anxiety and impatience.
Anxiety and impatience.
Anxiety over the short-term results. Did I succeed today? Did I make money this week? And impatience because you don't recognize or trust the compounding power of small, consistent actions over years.
The consequence of this short-sightedness, then, is inconsistency.
Guaranteed inconsistency. When things inevitably get difficult, the lack of a compelling, distant future vision makes quitting incredibly easy. Why endure productive pain today if the reward feels too far away to matter?
So the long-term vision is an anchor.
It's an emotional anchor. It tells the strategic mind, the daily struggle is worth it because I know exactly where this effort leads in 5 years. Without that anchor, you just drift aimlessly, and inconsistent performance is the only possible result.
And the final trap, which is particularly prevalent in our always-on culture. 11. No mental recovery. The failure to prioritize genuine mental rest.
This is a mind that is operating 24/7. Even when the body is still, mind is always scrolling, always worrying, always planning, always comparing, always reviewing past failures. We see this as a virtue, always thinking about work.
The hustle culture badge of honor.
Right, but it's actually devastatingly destructive.
What does true mental downtime achieve that, say, just sitting on the couch watching TV doesn't?
True mental recovery, we're talking silence, space, focused non-consumption, is what builds the very foundations of creativity, peace, and long-term mental strength. The brain needs consolidation time. It needs the space to process stimuli from the day and clear the cache.
It's like defragging a hard drive.
It is exactly like that. If you never rest the control center, creativity suffers, burnout accelerates, and your decision-making becomes brittle and weak. You wouldn't run a marathon every single day without rest periods and recovery protocols. Yet, we treat the brain, the most complex and critical organ we have, as if it has infinite capacity without any need for conscious, scheduled recovery.
Wow. Okay, you listening right now, take a moment. Which one of those 11 problems did you immediately recognize in yourself? Which one is the primary block on your path to greatness? Just identifying it is the critical first step to regaining control.
And now that we have the honest diagnosis, we are pivoting. This is the shift from problem identification to radical action. We move into the prescription.
All right, this segment is entirely about tools, practical, high-value methodologies you can apply immediately. We're going from chaotic diagnosis to structured, intentional control. These are the building blocks of that unbreakable mind.
And control is impossible without visibility. You cannot manage the inputs if you don't even know what they are.
Which brings us to solution number one. 1. The thought audit method. This is the critical first practice. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's non-negotiable. Spend just 5 minutes every single morning writing down the thoughts that are swirling in your head.
No editing.
No editing, no judgment, just pure documentation like a journalist reporting on the chaos inside.
And why 5 minutes? And why writing? Because the moment you externalize a thought, you begin to weaken its internal power over you. The specific targets here are crucial. You are identifying irrational fears, the things you worry about that have almost zero chance of happening.
Right.
You're spotting negative patterns, the repetitive internal messages of inadequacy we just talked about, and you're exposing unhelpful beliefs, the ideas you've accepted about yourself that actively limit your potential.
But once they are on the paper, how does the listener translate that written chaos into actual control?
That's where the audit part comes in. Once it's written, you can categorize it. You look at a fear and you ask, is this actually true? What is the objective evidence for this? You look at a negative pattern, say, I always mess this up, and you question the generalization.
You challenge it.
You challenge it.
Yeah.
This simple act transforms an overwhelming, ambient internal feeling into manageable, observable data. You move from being the subject of your thoughts to being the analyst of your thoughts. Awareness is the critical first step to control. You literally cannot steer a ship you can't see, and the thought audit shines the light.
Okay, so now that we can see the inputs, we need to create space, actual distance between the strategic you and all that mental chaos.
Our first step in creating that distance is 2. Mental fasting, or digital detox blocks. This is a non-negotiable requirement for developing mental resilience. We are demanding 30 minutes daily with 0 digital input.
No phone, no music, no podcast, no YouTube, no news.
Pure silence.
For many high achievers, that sounds like absolute torture. Why is the resistance so high, and why is this 30 minutes so essential for the MGG philosophy?
The resistance is high because you are starving the dopamine system of its immediate reward. You're cutting off its supply. The why is essential. This practice strengthens your internal world by forcing your mind to sit with itself and confront the noise you've been actively avoiding.
It's exercise for the attention muscle.
Exactly. When you stop feeding the mind external input, it defaults to all that internal noise anxieties, unfinished tasks, self-criticism. By consistently practicing this fasting, you teach your brain that you are in charge of when and how stimuli are processed, not the notification chime. It's how you build internal solitude of self-reliance, giving your strategic mind space to actually breathe.
Next, we address immediate emotional response with 3. Emotional naming. When you feel that surge of an overwhelming emotion, anger, frustration, immediate desire, don't act on it, label it.
This simple high-leverage practice is rooted in cognitive behavioral science. When the feeling arises, you just step back and simply articulate it. I notice I am feeling frustrated, or I am observing a feeling of anxiety.
What does that naming actually do in the brain?
That act of intellectual articulation creates crucial psychological distance. It separates the observer, the conscious strategic self, from the actor, the limbic system that's throwing the tantrum. Naming it shifts the emotion from an overwhelming identity, I am angry, to just a temporary state, I feel anger.
So you possess the emotion, it no longer possesses you.
That's it. And that distance gives you the necessary millisecond to choose a strategic response instead of an impulsive reaction.
And there's a micro practice that consistently builds this endurance, which we're calling 8. Practice stillness reps.
This is high-level mental training that is so often dismissed because it sounds too simple. The exercise: sitting in absolute silence for 60 seconds. No distractions, no movement. This isn't meditation, it's just stillness.
It's a rep.
It's a rep for your brain's ability to resist the urge for instant distraction. If you can train your brain to be comfortable with just 60 seconds of stillness in the middle of a chaotic day, you build a massive amount of core emotional control. It proves to the internal critic that you don't need constant input or movement to be okay, and in doing so, you start to dismantle the weak, restless mind that's been built by dopamine addiction.
So if you don't consciously define your identity, the external world and all those 11 traps we talked about will define it for you. These next solutions ensure you are the programmer of your own internal operating system.
And this begins with 4. Identity programming. This is a direct, conscious command system aimed at reinforcing that internal compass. Instead of focusing on your past failures or your current fears, you actively and consistently tell your mind who you are.
And we're talking about powerful, action-oriented self-statements, right? Give us some examples.
Exactly. You don't say, I hope to be disciplined. That's just wishful thinking. It has no power. You state, I am disciplined, I am focused, I am in control of my time.
So why does that work? It sounds a bit like simple affirmation.
It's much deeper. The reason it works is that identity dictates action. Human beings are neurologically programmed to act in alignment with who they believe themselves to be. If you program your mind to genuinely believe you are a disciplined person, the choice to skip the gym or scroll social media becomes an existential violation of your own self-concept.
It creates internal friction.
It requires vastly more effort to act out of character. And that's how you make positive choices your default behavior.
And to protect that newly programmed identity, we implement 7, the inputs identity rule. This requires a brutal, ruthless curation of your mental environment.
This is both a defensive and an offensive maneuver. You must surround yourself only with content, people, and environments that reflect the identity and the life you're actively trying to build.
So if your goals require focus,
If your goals require focus, deep thinking, and strategy, but you're consuming content that is designed for outrage, drama, and instant gratification, you're working directly against your own programming. You're feeding the wrong algorithm.
the principle is inescapable. We become the average of our inputs.
It's non-negotiable. Your mind becomes what you feed it. If you feed it trash, low-quality, distracting, fear-based media, it will produce low-quality thoughts, low focus, and a fear-based identity. If you feed it mastery, challenging ideas, strategic conversations, inspiring high-performance content, it will produce greatness. The moment you implement this rule, you cut the energy source to mental clutter and zero mental boundaries simultaneously.
Knowing the right thing to do is absolutely worthless without the ability to execute it instantly and consistently. We need mechanisms that bypass the weak link, which is our reliance on fleeting motivation.
And that mechanism is 5, friction-based discipline. This is a brilliant behavioral rewire because it recognizes that motivation comes and goes, and systems remain. We manipulate the physical world to make positive action the path of least resistance.
This sounds like optimizing your environment to favor discipline. How do we practically apply this friction principle?
You utilize the concept of activation energy. You make bad habits hard and you make good habits easy.
Okay, give me an example for both.
For bad habits, you increase the friction. If scrolling your phone is your weakness, put it across the room before bed, lock it in a drawer, or even use a time lock box. This forces physical effort to access the distraction. For good habits, you decrease the friction. Set your gym clothes out the night before, prepare tomorrow's healthy lunch right now, or leave the book you want to read open on your desk.
So you're reducing the activation energy required to start.
Exactly. You shift the battleground from relying on internal willpower, which is exhaustible and finite, to external design, which is sustainable and consistent.
That is true leverage. And when willpower is required, we have to address that moment of hesitation directly with 9, the 5-second action trigger.
Hesitation is the moment the negative inner dialogue gains traction. It's the critical window where your emotional brain starts creating these sophisticated, clever rationalizations for procrastination.
Right, I'll do it in 5 minutes.
I'm too tired right now. This immediate method stops that internal negotiation cold. When you know what you should do, make that difficult call, start that challenging task, get out of bed, but you feel the inevitable resistance, you just count down. 5.4, 0.3, 0.2, 0.1. Action.
Why does that simple countdown work so powerfully? What's the science?
The countdown interrupts the cognitive pattern that leads to avoidance. It's a pattern interrupt. It forces immediate physical movement, which bypasses the emotional brain's ability to construct a rationalization. Mel Robbins popularized this concept, but the underlying psychology is sound. Movement creates momentum.
You don't need to feel motivated to start, you just need to move.
That's the key. The 5-second trigger is the highest value tool for defeating mental laziness and emotional impulsiveness in real time.
Mental mastery is a compounding game. These next tools ensure you're always aiming toward your strategic future self and learning from every single day.
Yeah, let's talk about consistency over intensity with 6, the 1% mental growth rule. This taps into the power of compounding consistency to defeat mental laziness and that short-term vision we talked about. We are not asking for massive, painful overhauls, but a daily, tiny commitment to challenge the mind.
Explain what that 1% challenge looks like in practice. What's a concrete example?
It has to be one thing every single day that requires genuine cognitive effort and is slightly uncomfortable. This could be reading 10 pages of a challenging nonfiction book that requires high focus. It could be learning one new complex concept that's relevant to your professional field.
Or solving a hard problem.
Or solving one complex work problem instead of deferring it. The critical element is the difficulty, that productive discomfort. The mental fitness derived from this consistent difficult output is what truly compounds, making your mind demonstrably sharper, more resilient, and more capable of handling complexity month after month.
The 1% gain today feels negligible.
But over 3 years, it is absolutely transformative.
Moving into reflection, we have 10, the end-of-day mental review. This isn't about just checking off your to-do list. It's a dedicated practice of reviewing your mind's performance against the MGG code.
And this reflection requires brutal honesty. It's the primary engine for improvement. Before you power down for the day, you ask yourself 3 high-leverage questions about your mental operation. First, what did my mind do today? Did I waste resources, or was I intentional?
Second question.
Second, did I react emotionally when I should have been strategic, pinpointing the exact moment of impulsivity? And third, did I stay focused during my peak work block, or did I allow addictive distractions to win the battle?
Why is this review so critical to mental mastery? Why not just start fresh tomorrow?
Because without it, you are doomed to repeat the exact same mental errors tomorrow. You position reflection as the ultimate learning mechanism. It forces you to extract actionable lessons from every single day, turning every mental failure into data for optimization. It also addresses the lack of mental recovery by giving the mind a designated time to process and conclude the day, rather than letting worries spiral endlessly into the night.
And the most transformative mental exercise of all, the synthesis of future vision and present action, is 11, the future self-mapping exercise.
This is designing your destination, your strategic identity, before you even start the drive. The exercise is to dedicate real time to writing down in vivid detail who you want to be in 3 years.
Detail the skills.
The skills, the character traits, the habits, the environment the future self inhabits. Be granular. This defeats short-term vision by making the future compelling and immediate.
But the real power is bridging that gap back to the present moment, right? It's not just a dream.
Absolutely. That's the critical step. Once that future self is mapped out, you impose one challenging question on yourself every single morning. What would that version of me, the disciplined, focused, strategic master, do today? The entire challenge of the MGG philosophy is to act from that future identity NLW. If future you is disciplined, then current. You cannot skip the gym. If future you is organized, current, you must organize the desk. This forces immediate alignment and rapidly bridges the gap between who you are and who you must become.
So we turn that question back to you, the listener. Take that map you just created in your mind. Who is the future self you're trying to build, and which of these 12 practical tools, the thought audit, mental fasting, identity programming, will they use starting today?
We have journeyed through all the traps and we've armed you with the tools. The final solution is the one that synthesizes everything. It's the daily operational system, the code of conduct for engagement.
This is 12, the MGG Mental Mastery Code. This is your mantra for transformation, synthesizing this entire deep dive into a single, powerful commitment. You use this as your measure, your framework, and your definition of internal success.
And the code is simple, powerful, and total. It defines the hierarchy of control, starting with the highest leverage point.
Control your thoughts. That's the awareness you gain from the audit.
Direct your emotions. That's the distance you gain from naming and from stillness.
Choose your identity. That's the programming you enforce with intention and with curated inputs.
Shape your habits. That's the execution you gain from friction and the 5-second trigger.
And finally, master your mind. That is the ultimate outcome of the MGG philosophy.
We've taken the critical journey from the 11 traps that erode your potential, the autopilot living, the negative self-talk, the fear-based paralysis, all the way to the 12 precise tools designed to build mental strength, from the thought audit to the future self-mapping exercise.
And remember the core commitment of this entire deep dive. This was not entertainment. This was strategy for transformation. Mental strength is not some passive trait you inherit. It is an active weapon you must forge and sharpen daily through consistent, focused effort.
We have to reinforce that MGG philosophy of discipline and growth. Your mind is the ultimate high leverage point. If you control your thoughts, you control your habits, your emotions, and ultimately, your entire trajectory. Mental strength is not optional.
It's the weapon.
It is the ultimate weapon for achieving the greatness you are aiming for.
We want to leave you with one final thought, something essential to mull over long after this discussion finishes. If your mind is constantly being fed by external forces, by algorithms designed to keep you addicted, by media designed to provoke outrage, by other people's dramas and demands, how can you ever expect to hear the quiet, powerful, strategic voice of your own potential greatness?
You can't. It requires silence, it requires space, it requires discipline, it requires mastery. The external world is loud, but your internal strategic voice, it only whispers. You have to create the conditions to hear it.
We love hearing how you're integrating these specific tools into your routine, so let us know in the comments below right now. Which specific habit will you start today? Is it implementing the 5-second action trigger? Is it your first committed 30 minutes of mental fasting? Drop your commitment in the comments. Like this deep dive, share it with someone who needs to seize control of their internal world, and subscribe to continue this journey of growth.
Because here, we believe one thing above all else.
Mastery grows greatness.